State Road 40 at night is a mouth that never quite closes. It breathes through the Ocala trees, exhales heat even after midnight, pulls crickets and semis and last chance neon into the same long sentence. I'd come off I-75 too late for dinner and too early for sleep, ferrying a box of auto parts from Tampa to a warehouse in Daytona because my boss said the morning shift would love you for it, which is a polite way of saying you're expendable and the clock owns you. The air smelled like hot plastic and pine. My windshield had the salt bloom you get when the day starts as ocean and ends as road. At the Shell station outside Silver Springs, the fluorescent hum was a tune I already knew. One ice chest slumped open like a yawn. Moths went into the blue bug zapper with the faithful resignation of people trying to belong. I bought a Mountain Dew, a pack of peanuts, and a sense of accomplishment that lasted until I noticed my gas cap door hanging open, a callback from a habit I wish I didn't have. She was there on the curb under the payphone, one foot on the concrete bumper, the other balanced on the ball of her foot like each toe had an opinion. Denim jacket with the cuffs dark from 1,000 steering wheels. Hair, the color sun gives to people who don't ask its permission, chopped blunt at the shoulder. A lighter fussing in her hands as if fire were a living friend who sometimes forgot her birthday. She saw me attach the cap, watched how my fingers looked like they knew what they were doing, and made the calculation people make in these hours. Is this the kind of man who says no? "You're eastbound?" she asked. Smoker's rasp, northern vowels still stuck under the Florida molasses. "Daytona," I said, which was true, but also a way to put an ending in the sentence early. "I can be out by the Target on Nova," she said, like I'd already said yes, and she was just editing the route for efficiency. "You'll barely notice me." She smiled. Not pretty, compelling. Smiles like that know they don't have to work hard if they bring a story to carry the weight. The attendant looked over once, decided to like his magazine better. A pickup truck grumbled off the lot and turned the night into a new shape with its taillights. I've given rides in the daylight, in the panhandle, to a guy with a toolbox who told me about an alternator so lovingly I considered marrying one. At midnight in the center of the state, the rules are different. Your better self is tired, your worse self wants company, and the road makes decisions for you by pretending none of them matter. She flicked the lighter once without looking at it, and the flame did what people don't, showed up. "You're not dangerous, are you?" I said, smiling the way a man smiles when he hopes the joke eats half the risk. She snorted. "I'm 5'2" and 90 pounds soaking wet, and this jacket's a third of that." She didn't add, "And you're the one with a car," but the sentence hung between us anyway, smelling like gasoline and the last 10 bad decisions men made around her. She tipped her chin at the passenger door. "You gonna make me ask twice?" It was the way she said twice that got me. Not needy, not sharp, patient, like she collected yeses the way kids collect shells. She knew what the ocean would do if she waited. I opened the door. She climbed in and brought Florida with her, the metallic heat, the motel soap, the yeasty tang of beer dried on denim. When the door closed, the car became a room rented by the minute. "Seatbelt," I said by reflex. "Aw," she said with a grin that had teeth in it. "Safety is sexy." We pulled out. The gas station receded into a postcard someone forgot to mail. The road pinched to 2 lanes and then widened like breath. My headlights carved a shallow bowl out of the pines. She cracked the window for the cigarette she hadn't lit yet and let the wind tease smoke out of the paper. "You got a name?" I asked. "Sure," she said. "Lots. Pick one you like." She looked at my hands on the wheel, the little nicks, the scar that lives where apartment doors meet careless thumbs. "You're a careful driver." "You say that like it's a sin." "It is," she said. "In this state, it is. You drive careful. They pass you. They pass you. They get cocky. They get cocky. You get dead." She tongued the filter, the lighter chuffing again and again like a prayer. "Night like this, careful is a way of telling the road you don't trust it." "I don't," I said. "Smart." She looked pleased, like I'd matched her in a game I didn't know we were playing. "You can call me Lee," she added after a beat, offering me a name that felt like a test to see if I would try to make it longer. "Lee," I said. "I'm Dan." "Of course you are." She put her bare feet up on the dashboard with a graceless ballerina flex, then dropped them again when she realized it would leave prints that might matter later. That was the first thing that made my stomach look for a chair. "You local," I said, because men talk when they're trying to keep their hands boring. "For now." She grinned into the window, into her own reflection. "Florida's a place, not a home. Don't you know that?" "When you were a kid, where'd you want to live?" I asked, because if a person tells you their first map, you can sometimes tell how they plan to get lost. "Anywhere," she said. "Anywhere the men keep their promises." Then, quieter, "Nowhere, I guess." We rolled past the black sawgrass of a retention pond, the white scrape of a billboard where an attorney promised to make pain into money, the kind of old cinder-block diner that changes names but never pancakes. The road yo-yoed between lonely and lit. The lit parts looked like islands people had built just so they could pretend not to be surrounded. "You look tired," she said. "You one of those boys that sleeps like a dog after a job?" She widened her eyes without moving her head. "Or you keep the radio on to scare away your thoughts?" "I make lists," I said. "I bully tomorrow into behaving." "Lists are lies," she said, delighted. "I like you, Dan." She asked about my ex without asking, the way women do when they're deciding whether to let your version of the past be the one they have to listen to. I said enough to sound trustworthy and not enough to be interesting. She told me a story about a cop on A1A who once took her to a Waffle House and bought her the kind of breakfast that understands what a night did to you. It was told like a love letter to a kindness she found on layaway. It was told like a dare to me to do better. At the Marion County line, she sat forward like an animal who hears a change in the weather. "You got cash?" she asked, airy as windshield mist. "A little," I said. "You hungry?" She grinned without heat. "I'm always hungry." Then, almost impatiently, "How much gas you got?" "Half," I said, inexplicably embarrassed. She said. "We'll be fine." "We'll." She'd promoted herself to co-captain without pausing to see if the crew consented. The cigarette burned unlit between two fingers. She touched the tip to the lighter anyway and watched the paper go brown, the ember pretend to exist. "Stop," she said suddenly. "I gotta pee." "We're almost to," she laughed. "Look at you pretending to be in charge." Then she directed me, calm as a coach. "Left at that break in the fence. Preserve Road. There's a pull-off. I won't be a minute." I slowed. It wasn't a good pull-off. It was the suggestion of one. Sugar sand had collected in a half moon where the county maintenance guys dumped brush and empty cigarette packs. The palmetto fronds were knives pretending to be fans. We nose-inched between two pines until the headlights found nothing to bounce off and gave up. "Keep the lights," she said, swinging the door open. "Snakes like headlines. You give 'em that, they hide." She went a few steps into the scrub and disappeared with the instant intimacy Florida gives to people who want it. I stared at my own pale hands on the wheel and recited the first 6 items on tomorrow's list. I left out "don't be stupid" because the car already knew. When she came back, she brought the woods with her. Spider silk, a smear of green on her knee, the smell of palmetto and night, and something else, a new silence. She slid in, closed the door, looked at my seatbelt, then at hers, clicked hers in without looking down. It was neat and quick, like a trick she wanted me to think she was new at. "What's your worst fear?" she asked conversationally. "The usual," I said. "Heights, disappointing the right people, my mother's voicemail." She smiled like I'd told her a joke she'd heard before and loved anyway. "Not death?" "Death is a bureaucrat," I said. "He'll get to me when the forms line up." "Cute," she said. "You're cute, you know that?" The word didn't sound like praise. It sounded like a label the night would understand when it picked me off a shelf. I start to say, "You doing okay?" and then stop, because the answer will be an answer to a different question. She sees that. She rewards it. She reaches into her jacket pocket and takes something out like a magician showing the crowd the hand that's empty. The other hand does the work. By the time my eyes understand it, the smaller thing has come to live in the car, a small gun in a small hand. It sits there like a mouse that's learned to speak. "Don't get heroic," she says. "The light isn't enough to make metal look like anything but a shape. The muzzle is a coin I owe." I lift my hands off the wheel by an inch, palms up, the way men in movies do when they want to make the next scene last longer. She smiles. "Good boy," she says, not unkind. a woman used to talking to animals that run. I don't want trouble, I hear myself say, which is audition tape dialogue, but also true. You don't have to want it, she says. It shows up when it feels like it. There is the temptation, at this exact second, to talk, to fill the car with bargains, money, the car itself, shoes, a joke. The pleading voice works on television because someone in the room has to show their hands 20 minutes in, and commercials don't like silence. I don't talk, I listen. Her breath, the click of the vent, the way the gun hums, the way bees do when they're inside a wall you thought was yours. You're going to put your left hand on the shifter, she says. 2 fingers. You're going to put it in drive. You're going to pull onto the shoulder. You're going to keep the lights off. We're going to take the service road that says authorized vehicles only because we are tonight authorized. And if I don't, I ask gently. She smiles wider. Then we start the extra. I hate the extra. The extra is messy. I do what she tells me. We creep out of the trees. The sand complains under the tires. The highway stays itself and refuses to notice. The service cut is where she said, there's a chain you could move if you wanted to pretend rules are for other people. I nudge under it because I am the kind of person who would rather apologize to a chain than to a gun. You ever shoot anybody? I ask, a question that is equal parts flirting with fate and asking the dentist whether there will be music. She takes her time. I don't like that question. Then, after a beat, like a teacher deciding whether a student has earned the trick, I don't do it for fun. Why do you do it? Because they don't listen, she says. I make a humming sound that admits her thesis into the minutes. The road narrows to a hardpan path that wants to be a deer trail when it grows up. Trees lean in like old men in lawn chairs at 3 p.m. on a weekday. We stop where she tells me. We are nowhere. We are everywhere. Keys, she says, out. I turn the engine off. The cicadas take our seat. I put the keys in my right hand and keep my right hand visible. She opens her door, and the dome light gives us both a brief halo that's more insult than glamour. She walks around the hood and appears in my window, looking down. The gun takes in night air and shivers like it belongs to it. Out, she says. Can I? You can breathe, she says. You can do that. That's free. I step out into heat that never learned the date changed. The sand takes my shoe like it collects people. The dome light makes her eyes a color no one orders. She looks smaller out here, which I think for one treasonous second might be good news. Then she shifts the gun a quarter inch, and I realize everything has been done for my benefit. The size, the talk, the brand of cigarettes, the girlness in the jacket. She is not small. She is shaped like a plan. You picked me, I say, because she wants me to understand something before the night finishes teaching it. You picked me, she says back, amused. You think this jacket is an accident? I should be begging by now. Instead, I find myself wanting to know how her mind solved the puzzle of me. What did I do wrong? You were tired and decent, she shrugs. That's the sweet spot. You said you don't like extra. I don't, she says. So be good, belt off. She means my belt. I take it off with deliberate stupidity. I let the tongue miss the hole twice. I make my fingers clumsy without letting them shake. She is patient about it in the way people are when they want to enjoy how merciful they're being. She takes the belt and ties my wrists in front of me. It's not expert. It's tidy. Tidy is worse. Walk, she says, and we do our little procession into the palmetto. The sand remembers our feet well enough that someone will be able to read our story backwards if they know the alphabet of distress. She stops when the trees make a half room, and angels, if they bothered with this corner, would call it intimacy. On your knees, she says. The gun's muzzle points at my face and becomes a letter from an alphabet where all the characters mean do not. I go down. My knees find the roots that have been practicing for this for 40 years. The jacket's denim squeaks when she shifts. She says in a voice that wants to sound like God and sounds instead like what men make God into, "You going to be a gentleman about this?" How do you mean? You gonna let the world be one less asshole tonight, she says, or you going to make me do extra? I have to ask, what makes a man an asshole? She smiles like I've asked the one redeeming question in a semester. Oh, baby, she says softly, existing, mostly. I can unexist, I say, managing a joke, because if I don't, my mouth will start doing Mercy's ugly cousin. I gesture with my bound hands. Exit the brand. She laughs. It's real. That scares me more than the gun. She squats without surrendering height, bringing us face to face. I can smell her. Beer from earlier. Some motel's idea of lilac. Salt. The human smell sweat makes when it's made of adrenaline and 10 years of promises that evaporate before they hit the ground. I got no quarrel with you, she says in a tone that suggests she has professionally sized quarrels stocked in the back. But I know what you are. What am I? A man with a car at midnight, she says. You think the rest of it changes the math? I don't have to be. That's what they all say, she says, more weary than cruel. And then they get a look at the bill. The muzzle dips a hair. Not enough to mean anything. Enough for me to decide it means a version of hope that requires me to be very smart immediately. I could show you, I say, and keep my voice quiet, as if the trees would tell on me if I got theatrical. I could show you a version of me that doesn't require anything of you. You want money? I got an ATM card. You want the car? Take it. You want to hurt somebody? Pick a different religion. She tilts her head. Big words, she says. Did you go to school? Big words? Enough to know how to fail politely, I say. She smiles. The gun is steady as a bench. Something in her face loosens, not because I am moving her, but because she loves this part, the part where I try to purchase a future with language. She saw my wallet earlier when I paid for gas. She knows exactly what my hands can buy. She takes a beat to let me roll in that knowledge. Then she reaches into her jacket and pulls out a cigarette and puts it between my lips like she's mocking the priest I didn't ask for. Last one, she says tenderly. Lights it. The sulfur blooms. The paper goes red-brown. The smoke enters like it knows the layout. You get 1 minute, she says, as if I had ordered mercy and she were telling me when it would arrive. What do you do with your minutes? I ask through smoke I don't want. She looks past me like the woods have a television. I listen, she says. I listen for the truck that will save you, the hunter who will name me, the boyfriend who will grow a spine. When I don't hear those, I do what I came to do. You ever hear the truck? Once, she says, irritated at the memory. He was drunk and I was mad. She looks miffed the way you do when a restaurant gets your order right but ruins your appetite. We sit there, me with a cigarette I am pretending to enjoy, and she with a gun she is not pretending about. I make my face ask an old terrible favor time. She's good at refusing it without saying no. She has chosen me, and that grants her a simplifier's high. I do not know what to say, so I say the thing that respects her rage without feeding it. What happened to you, I manage, wasn't your fault. That's when something changes. She goes very still, as if words were a predator she knows to hold statue for. Her jaw muscles do a small shiver. She nods once, not to me, to the air that had those words in it. Thank you, she says, and it sounds like a woman I would have lent rent to in a better year. Then the gun comes back into the center of the frame. But it's too late tonight. I try a different tack. What's her name? I ask. Her eyes flicker. Who? The girl you love, I say. The one who likes your stories. Her mouth curves, contempt and pride in a single shape. You FBI? I'm a man with a mouth, I say, and 1 minute. She shakes her head. The gun dips, a hair, then rises. She's nobody, she says. She falters, which almost feels like kindness. She's safe if I keep being me. You're miscalculating the math, I say gently. Tonight goes the way you think, and her life gets marked up on a ledger you don't get to see. You don't know anything about my ledgers, she says sharply. And now there is genuine self standing in the sand, and it is younger and more dangerous than the woman with the gun. The cigarette ash grows a spine and sighs off into the dark. My hands are bound with my own belt. The knot is neat and not invincible. I look at her cigarette pack in her breast pocket, at the BIC in her fist, at my keys on her waistband where she hooked them like a trophy. I calculate distances the way men who will not win still do. I could be the story you tell yourself on the bus in 10 years, I say, about how you chose not to. You could get off and look at the people who know whose face is in the paper and say I'm not that. You think I ride buses, she says, amused. You think you don't, I say. She breathes in, out. The night tunes itself to her. She reaches a decision. I see it set in her shoulders the way you see a diver, except cold. Her mouth pins the cigarette to the corner of her lip, and she adjusts her aim. There is no drama in it. It is a woman doing a chore. Stand up, she says. I stand. The world becomes an exclamation point. Turn, she says. Walk. Which way? Into it. I take 3 steps. 4. 5. She follows at a distance that says she knows my reach and respects it. The cigarette is a firefly that thinks it's a star. My hands have a plan that is insulting to knots. I do the thing you read about and never think you will have to do. I inhale. I hold. I move my wrists in opposite circles to create a wrong angle in the belt's logic. It gives an idea like a tooth gives in the mouth of a man who chews ice during fights. Don't, she says softly behind me, as if my body were her pet and the scrub were a busy street. I don't want extra, I say. You said you didn't. Turn around, she says. I turn. The muzzle is a moon. Her eyes are lakes at night in a state where lakes are holes in the ground pretending to be heaven. She looks at my hands and can tell something has changed. She gives herself the gift of pretending she doesn't. 1 minute, she says again softly. Last one. You keep giving me last ones, I say. Feels like you want to know what I'm going to do with them. She grins, and her teeth catch the dome light that still, stupidly, glows in the car we left 30 feet behind. I already know. There are knights, I've learned, that get jealous if you try to put them back into daylight. They want to stay themselves. They resent translation. This night had that quality. The bugs sang like a radio stuck between stations. The pines made the noise pines make when they've been forced to share a state with wind that refuses to graduate to storm. She gestured with the gun, and I moved. You pray? She asked casually as we skirted a stump that had remembered its tree too long. Not well, I said. My grandma liked Jesus, she said. I like cigarettes and fair fights. She cocked her head. You believe in fair fights? No. Good, she said, satisfied. We don't have one here. She kept me at arm's length and 1 step ahead, which put me in the position of teaching her where not to step. Sugar sand here, roots there, a palmetto dagger where it shouldn't be. I told her twice, and both times she pretended not to hear. She's not the kind to step where men tell her. She's the kind to bleed to prove a point. I filed that under doorways. You got kids? She asked suddenly. No, I said. Good, she said again, like it was an answer that belonged to her. Kids are the kind of extra that never pays out. You? She laughed. You think I'd let a life climb out of me so a man could claim it? She smacked her lips at the idea. No, honey. I let other people's men buy me dinner, and I let their kids pretend I'm a comet. Someone taught you about comets, I said. She shrugged. Library. Then, as if remembering I was a person and not just tonight's task. You a good man? I try, I said. She laughed softly. That's what they say right before the seatbelt clicks. You do a lot of seatbelts? She smiled sideways. I do a lot of teaching. We reached a wider spot in the scrub where someone had dumped broken concrete and called it a solution. The moon, which had been too polite up to now, cleared its throat and made trees into sticks. She stopped me with the smallest sound men make when someone they love is about to step into the street. The gun tapped my spine. Not hard. Enough. Here, she said. Knees. I went down again, and the ground found the same 2 bruises it had begun earlier, like it had been practicing for this act and wanted credit. She circled me, so I had to follow her with my head. Predators do this. It makes eyes tired and decisions less brave. She wasn't grinning anymore. She looked like a person completing a form where all the boxes have had your name printed in already. Last call for honesty, she said. You want confession? I asked. I ate 3-day Chinese for breakfast and told my boss I did it because I like leftovers, not because I was broke. I said no worries to a woman who didn't apologize for cutting me off because I didn't want to hear her talk. I put off calling my father because he tells the same 3 stories and they make me cry in the same 2 places. You're funny, she said, but the edge was off the compliment. She had been prepared for other men who offer $200 and a thank you and the imaginary promise to quit drinking. I gave her needlepoint. She doesn't want it. She wants the pattern. I also, I said, and I let my voice move closer to the dirt, haven't bought anyone in years. Bought? You know what I mean, I said. She watched me like it was the least convincing lie she'd seen this week. You all buy, she said. Groceries, cars, girls. You got receipts for all of it. You fold them up neat so your wallet thinks you're organized. And you? I said. I collect names, she said, and I discharge debts. She smiled, pleased with her own prose. Stand, she said. Take 2 steps to your right. I did. That put my back to a tree with the kind of bark that remembers nails. She stood 10 feet away and looked at me like a woman appraising a dress she knows she'll steal. The gun was steady. The cigarette had been smoked down to raw paper and stubbornness. She flicked it to the ground. Fireflies got jealous. Look at me, she said. I did. Her eyes were lighter than I'd expected. People assume killers' eyes are black or blue like knives. These were lake water in August. Pretty, tired, deceptive. Say it, she said. What? That you know why, she said. Say it so I don't have to become things I don't like. You want me to say I deserve it, I said. You want me to make it easy to be the person you already are. She smiled, and something gentle returned to her face that I wish I didn't have to see. Good boy, she said softly. I like you knowing the rules. Then let me do you one better, I said, because if a door opens, you put your foot in it, even if the room beyond has knives. Let me put it on me. Let me walk into the woods and keep walking. Keep the car. Keep the money. Keep your ledgers clean, and let my dumb feet be the ones that take me out of the math, she thought. It looked like a woman choosing between 2 cans of soup at a dollar store when she knows she only has $1 and the day expects dinner to issue from it anyway. You think walking is penance, she said, almost dreamy, like God likes cardio. God likes bargains, I said. You get what you want. I get to keep a version of the word later. She looked left. Right, up, like as if maybe the moon might weigh in. The gun didn't move. Her fingers did a little dance on the grip, like they were teaching themselves a new idea. She walked forward 2 paces and touched my cheek with the back of her knuckles, like checking for fever. It's shockingly intimate to have a woman consider your temperature while she decides whether to end it. You got someone waiting? She asked. Yes, I said, because if there is a time to lie, this is it, and if there is a time to tell the truth, it is every hour you haven't been given. A sister. She worries too much. You call her? She asked, genuinely curious. I was going to, I said, when I got to the motel. She considered the motel like men consider rings. You go to rooms, she said, almost to herself. You sleep where other people ruin things and get up smiling anyway. It's a talent, I said. She smiled too. I could do it, she said in a small voice that had not been invited into this night until now. She was talking about sleeping in a room someone else had lived in without letting it own her. She was talking about having the kind of day that belongs to the person who slept in it. Yes, I said. She took a step back. The moment passed like stray weather. The gun came forward. Turn, she said, and the word had enough braided into it. I turned. The belt on my wrists had learned another trick from my skin and my fingers. It slumped a 1/4 inch in the way of things that recognize that the future doesn't include them. She came close to check. I felt her breath on my knuckles. My right thumb found the smallest truth about knots. Attention is mistress and enemy. I pulled. The belt bit. She noticed. Not with anger. Anger is for amateurs, but with disappointment. Honey, she said, and her mouth made the O like a hug, and the gun made the H like a hallway. Don't. Show me how, I said, and the sentence did a thing to her I hadn't expected. Her shoulders straightened at the compliment. Teacher's preen. She loosened the knot and then retied it properly, behind the wrists, a loop through a loop, the kind of sailor trick that holds even when you call it by a pretty name. I bowed my head, as if in gratitude. The moment she leaned in to check her work, I let my knees buckle. You'd be amazed what gravity will do for you if you give it a goal. I dropped like an apology. My shoulder hit her thigh. The gun, for the first time, was not at my face but at the sky. She cursed, not loud, just an efficient vowel. The shot went into the pines. Somewhere a bird decided to be someone else. I shoved forward with a body that had just decided living required impoliteness. We both fell. Sand is a liar. It looks soft. It bites. It filled my mouth with a taste like pennies pretending to be biscuits. I rolled, and the palmettos made their case to my skin. She scrambled, smaller but smarter, and got the gun into the conversation again before I could write the next sentence. She was panting hard, and so was I, and the night had decided to attend. You blew it, she said, furious not at the idea of shooting me. She had bought that, furious at the mess. You made extra. I told you, I said between gulps. I'm not careful. She stood. The gun made the sky a place with opinions. Stand, she ordered, and now the voice was mother, not girlfriend, not cop. Make it easy. The thing about palmettos is that they cut your calves in a pattern that can pass for a map if you squint. Mine were bleeding in neat souvenirs. I stood. She took 2 quick steps forward and pushed the muzzle into my sternum as if putting me back on a shelf. This is where you stop. Let me say something, I said. You've been saying somethings for 20 minutes, she said. I put my hands up, the belt biting beautifully, the right loop sloppy from the drop. One thing then, I said, pointed at me, not at my back. She blinked. Something like respect passed over her face like a storm cloud that doesn't want to rain because the yard doesn't deserve it. All right, she said. Front. She took a beat. You'll look at me. I will, I said. I'll see you looking at me. She said, and for a second I understood something that would wake me up for months. She wanted witnesses. Not the kind with notebooks, the kind in your body. She wanted the eyes of a man at the last second. She wanted custody of that. Okay, I said softly, because what else is there to say to a person who just told you the truest thing about their nights? Her mouth did a little downward quirk, the kind grief makes when it's busy doing a different job. She inhaled, exhaled, the gun steadied. The world hung its jacket on a chair and waited. And then the truck came. You don't always hear a truck. This one you felt first, low in the ground, the way bass turns your teeth friendly to each other. The night tilted as if a giant had shifted in his sleep and decided he liked us again. Headlights tore across the service road 20 yards to our left like someone scribbling "don't" with a light pen. She startled, not full body, just eyelids, just the small flinch of someone who has learned to keep her fear neat. We both looked. The truck, a white FWC pickup with a roof rack and the attitude of a man who's seen gators in places the state denies, slowed. The driver's silhouette did the math. 2 figures in scrub, one standing, one with hands in front, wrong. He angled the truck toward us, not fast, not heroic, just in the way of men who know being present is half the rescue. Don't, she said, fast as breath. And the gun came back up, not at me now, but toward the lit approach. Don't you wave. Don't you say a goddamn thing. Let me, I said very quietly. Don't make him part of this. You hate extra, remember? She froze in a wedge between 2 wrong choices. She could shoot me and run. She could make me her hostage and turn the FWC truck into a spectator sport. She could walk away and let this night go into limbo, where all the other nights she made have to stand in line. I can go, I said again, low. You can vanish. You'll get 10 minutes, maybe 30. Your boyfriend at the bar won't know to look until the jukebox coughs. Your girl in the room won't get nervous till morning. I made my voice smaller, like a man talking to a kicked dog with a steak in his hand. Let this one be the one you don't. The truck's spotlight raked us. It found my face, and she saw it. She saw herself in the reflection on my eyes and must have hated it or loved it or both. I felt the math tilt. Turn around, she whispered, suddenly urgent. Turn and run. If you look back, I shoot your spine. It was the most honest she'd been. If you run and never look back, I'll let you keep it. Keep what? Your eyes, she said. God damn it, go. I went. It wasn't bravery. It was compliance in the right direction. I ran like a man who couldn't promise his knees anything. The belt sawed. My shoulders announced their opinions in bright, sharp language. The palmetto said I love you in the way bad lovers do, with teeth. The truck honked. One short, 2 long, a question. I stumbled into the service road, and the sand turned to crushed shell, and then to the kind of packed earth people pretend counts as a road because maps say it does. I did not look back. I wanted to. I wanted to see if Red came after me like a judgment. I wanted to count whether she was a person shaped like a decision or a memory shaped like a woman. I didn't. I kept my eyes forward and my mouth open and my lungs incompetent. Hey, the FWC man called, and it was the best and worst sound I have ever heard. He sounded human and official and too late and just in time and tired. He sounded like a man who wanted to help without paperwork. He sounded like a father on the porch when the dog comes back at 3 a.m. with mud and apology. He saw the belt. He saw the hands. He didn't stop to ask permission to be the person I needed. He put the truck between me and the scrub, and he opened his door and said, "Behind me." Not because he is the kind of man who thinks his body is a wall, but because he knows trucks are. I fell against metal like it owed me something, and it paid up. Together we looked toward the half-room of trees where a woman with a small gun had made a small chapel out of the world. There was nothing there. The palmetto moved the way it always does when it wants to be the only witness. A cigarette ember got jealous of the moon and went out. The FWC man kept his eyes on the scrub and his hand on his radio. He said words that turned into other men, and other men mean everything and nothing. He said possible and female and armed and east of 40 and send highway patrol and send everybody who belongs to the night. He said it calm, like he'd been trained not to make new weather with his voice. He cut the belt off my wrists with a knife older than I am and said, "You hurt?" And I nodded, which is a way of admitting pain without inviting it to move in. He put me in the truck. He made a call. He made another. He kept looking at the scrub like it might apologize. Then he glanced at me sideways and said, "You did good," and added, because men like him are suspicious of praise, "Good enough." I put my head on my shoulder and cried a small, impolite cry that sounded like two dogs negotiating. He pretended to adjust the spotlight, which is what men do when they are generous about other men's tears. Highway patrol arrived. Troopers in hats that make their heads look like advice. One went into the brush and came out with nothing and the kind of patience that takes a paycheck. Another took my story as if it were a small animal he had to hold gently. He asked me for my name when he knew I needed it most. "What was she like?" he asked finally, soft. "Talkative," I said, and then because I felt the need to protect her in a way I'll deal with later, "Tidy." He nodded. He knows tidy. Florida breeds tidy the way it breeds mold. He patted the door and promised me a lobby and a paper cup and a detective who wouldn't ruin me. I sat and watched the scrub and tried not to fall in love with silence again. At the Volusia substation, the lights had the kilter of morning, even though it was 3 in the half-dead zone where time forgets its name. A woman in a green cardigan brought me a blanket from a dryer and said, "Don't ask questions about where it's been, it's warm." Her coffee breath made the air typewritten. A trooper named Jansen took my statement in a room with a bulletin board that told other tragedies in pushpin and Sharpie. He didn't fix my language when it broke. He let me repeat. He let me call her she instead of suspect, like I needed to honor something even as I condemned it. "You didn't see a plate?" he asked. "I saw a girl who wanted to scare snakes," I said. He didn't correct me to woman. He just nodded like I'd answered a different question correctly. "Was the gun a revolver?" he asked. "Small," I said. "Mean, the kind of gun a purse would apologize for." He hummed. He wrote 22, with a question mark large enough to be humble. He asked if she had a tattoo. "Not one that thinks it's a personality," I said. "A little heart near her wrist that still believes in itself." I was guessing. It felt true. He wrote tattoo, wrist, because sometimes believing is the first job. "How old?" he asked. 20, 40, both, I said. Younger when she decided, older when she aimed. He let that sit in the room like a fresh bruise. He brought me water. I drank it like a man who has finally learned his mouth doesn't have to ask permission. He asked me to circle a face in a lineup of mugshots that looked like men who disappointed every room they entered. I didn't circle a face. He didn't press. "We might call you tomorrow," he said, "or later today. It's hard to tell which it is." "Okay," I said. "If you find the cigarette, don't put it in the evidence bin under my name. I want to like mine again." He smiled. "You did good," he said, and then more official, but not less warm. "You did well." They let me go when the kind of light that means newspapers start happening put its hand on the building. The FWC man, the one whose truck decided to be the hero, was waiting. He nodded like men nod when they haven't asked permission to care. "You need a ride back to your car," he said. "Is that allowed?" I asked. "Son," he said, "we live in Florida. If you wait for allowed, you'll die of the heat." He drove me east. The day had become the idea of day. The service road looked like a mess you could admire if you weren't in it. My car was there, which I had secretly decided was impossible. The driver's side door was open as if embarrassed. the dome lights still aching to be pretty. We both stood and listened like the scrub might cough up a truth. It didn't. "You want me to follow you to a motel?" he asked. "I want you to keep existing," I said, which is the kind of thing I only say after nights with women in denim and guns. He nodded. "That we can do." At the motel, the clerk looked at my face and gave me a room without making a joke. The shower was the kind of shower you get at 2 stars. Honest water, lying curtain. The mirror had been etched with apologies by keys belonging to men who were sorry for the wrong things. I put the belt on the counter and looked at it until it became a snake. I put it in the trash and took it out again. I sat on the bed. I lay down. I stood up. I lay down again. I slept for 9 minutes and 80 dreams. When the phone rang, it sounded like a fire alarm going off in a church. "Mr. Ross," a voice said. "Detective Monroe, Volusia County. We've got a couple questions." They always do. We did an interview in a room that tried to smell like lemon. Monroe had the soft face that men who have seen too much sometimes grow to ease their own children. He asked if I could drive the service road again with him so he could watch my hands point to what my brain would like to forget. We went. The sand remembered us and resented the encore. He asked me to stand where she had stood and then where I had. The palmetto looked pleased to be consulting. "How close?" he asked. "Close enough to make breathing feel like an argument," I said. He nodded. He bent, picked up the ash of a cigarette that had learned humility, and put it into a paper envelope like it was a baby chick. "We'll see," he said. "We'll see." He asked me if I'd be willing to look at a set of photographs, not for identification, just for context. He laid them out as if he were building a house. The men were middle-aged in the particular way of men who ate alone and bought what they needed from people who didn't ask their names. Cars in ditches. License plates that look ashamed in photographs. The world does not always end with an exclamation point. Sometimes it ends with a toe. "Highway 19, he said quietly. US 301, all over the middle like somebody stirring a pot. He glanced up. "You lucky." "I compliant," I said. "That's different." He paused. "You're right." We did paperwork. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. I told him I wanted to press stop, and he smiled and slid the form into a folder that had been brand new for 10 seconds once. They gave me a card with numbers on it in case my brain grew helpful at 4 a.m. They asked me not to talk to reporters in case the story needed the dignity of silence. They asked me if I needed a ride to a therapist, and I told them I had a sister who would fill the job for free. Then I went back to the motel and lay down for 5 minutes that lasted a week. 2 days later, they called. "We've got her on pawn video from Ormond," Monroe said. 2 weeks back, she's using a ring that wasn't hers. He didn't say the rest. "We're working with Daytona. We're working with Marion. She's not a ghost." "She isn't," I said. "She drives a jacket into a room like it owes her a favor." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because humor is a handrail. "We'll be in touch." They were. They called when they had her in a bar with a name so proud of its own irony it didn't need a sign. They called when she told her girlfriend she would fix everything and then proved how broken fixes can be. They called when she confessed. They asked me if I wanted to come to court, and I said yes, because I wanted to see a woman who made me into a verb learn that nouns still matter. Courtrooms are terrible places to fall in love with justice. They smell like old books and AC and fear. The judge looked like he'd been carved out of Florida by a man who only owned 3 knives. She looked like a version of herself from a less honest world. Hair combed, lips chapsticked, jacket traded for something the state agreed counted as modesty. She didn't look at me. She looked at the ceiling like someone might lower a verdict by pulley. The prosecutor told a story with maps. He walked us through Central Florida like we were tourists, and terror was a scenic overlook. He made names into waypoints. He said things I can't repeat here without making this about him. Her lawyer told a story with weather. He said words like storm and survival and no other choice. He said men like it belonged in a box labeled culprit. He said she like it belonged in a box labeled evidence. When it was over, it wasn't. Sentences don't change what knights did. They just make it so knights like that have to wear a uniform if they want to keep happening. She stood to be told something that would make her small and large in the same hour. She nodded. She smiled once, crooked, sweet, in the direction of nobody. She went away. I drove 80 times over the next few months to places that didn't deserve me and brought things to people who didn't notice my hands shake when we counted. I slept with the light on sometimes, and sometimes in the closet, because a door, even a cheap one, feels like a plan. I started collecting quarters in pill bottles so I could lie to myself about emergencies. I stopped picking up people who had the shape of questions. I started handing cash out windows to people who weren't my problem because the world is a vending machine if you're scared enough. The FWC man texted me once from a number he probably shouldn't have used. "You okay?" it said. I wrote back, "Define okay," and he sent a photo of a gator at dusk looking like a log until it didn't. "Sometimes they're logs," he wrote. "Sometimes they ain't." I typed thanks and put an extra S on it by accident and left it because maybe he understood that meant something. Months later, at a gas station with a different humming and a Pepsi instead of a dew, a girl under a payphone asked me if I was heading east. She had a jacket. She had eyes that looked like they'd learned how to be old too fast. I said, gently, "No." And she said, "You sure?" And I said, "I'm sure." And she rolled her eyes at me like I had failed a test for which she had the answer key. I got in my car and watched the rear view until she got into someone else's, and then I pulled out into a night that had not forgiven me but had agreed to keep me. I still drive 40 sometimes, daylight only, heat like a wet shirt. I keep to exits with 2 gas stations and a fast food place because the math likes trios. I don't ask the road to be my friend. I ask it to let me pass without making me explain. It has so far been merciful. Mercy, like tidy, is a religion some of us practice even when we don't make it to the service. I learned something about minutes, the way one can become a cathedral if you lean the right way against it. I learned something about looking at a person who expects you to blink. I learned something about women who make themselves into hurricanes because the weatherman wouldn't pronounce their names. I learned that asking for front was the truest thing I've ever done. I am not special. I am not brave. I am a man who obeyed in the right direction once and got away with his eyes. That's all. That's enough. How am I doing now? Well, I keep my doors locked at lit exits, carry a spare 20 in the visor for no questions moments, and I don't make friends with midnight on State Road 40. Killer reveal. Aileen Carol Wuornos, a.k.a. the Damsel of Death, a.k.a. the Highway Killer. Aileen Wuornos, 1956 to 2002, murdered 7 men in 1989-1990 along Central Florida highways, Volusia, Marion, Citrus, and beyond, often luring rides and then shooting victims with a small .22 caliber handgun before abandoning their vehicles. Investigators linked cases across US 19, US. Throsity 01, an SR-40, aided by a crashed victim's car and pawn records. Arrested in Daytona Beach on January 9, 1991, she confessed after a taped call with her girlfriend and was later convicted and sentenced to death. Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison on October 9, 2002.